Okay, Hare Krishna, dear ladies, and welcome to the May Urban Devi Sangha and Women's Discussion Group. A special welcome to those joining us for a first time. If you are joining us for the first time, please write it in the chat so that we can all say hello. My name is Damodar Priya Devi Dasi, and I co-host this monthly gathering with our dear Rukmini Devi Dasi, or Rukmini Walker, as well as my god sisters, Surabhi Govinda Devi Dasi and Nartaki Radha Devi Dasi. So let me introduce our guest speaker for today. We have Syamala Priya Devi Dasi, and Syamala Priya Devi Dasi, also known as Sarah Sheikh, was introduced to Krishna consciousness in Washington, D.C. in 2010 through yoga classes and workshops with Hari Kirtan Das. She is a member of the Institute for Applied Spirituality, or IFAST, and ISKCON of DC Communities, where she serves as a pujari and is on the task force for the Prevention of Intimate Partner Abuse initiative. Professionally, she is a licensed clinical social worker and founder of Inner Foundations Counseling, which specializes in holistic mental health care, somatic psychotherapy, and grief counseling. And today she's going to be speaking on the topic Plant Your Heart and Cultivate Devotion. So, a little bit on that. She says, many of us yearn to be fully immersed in devotional service and the natural flow of giving and receiving love. However, balancing practical responsibilities while living in the world can be challenging. So today, Syamala Priya will share stories and lessons from her experience tending a community garden plot in Washington, D.C., and how this organically transformed her relationship to bhakti. So together, we'll explore how to unlock our own secret gardens and turn the seemingly ordinary into the extraordinary gift of love. So thank you so much, Syamala Priya, for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me? Great. It's wonderful to be here today. Hare Krishna, everyone. I'd like to begin by saying a prayer to my teacher and to all of you. Om Agyan Timirandasya Jananjala Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, who has opened my eyes, which were blinded by the darkness of ignorance, by giving me the torch of knowledge. Vanchakalpa Tarubhistya Kripa Sindhu Bacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnavis, the devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees, which can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are oceans of mercy and purifiers of the fallen souls. Today, I wanted to reflect together on the idea of cultivating our gardens of bhakti and how devotional life grows very much like a living garden. I was inspired to present on this topic through my own experience of growing a garden in Washington, D.C., and really feeling that absorbed me in devotional life in a way that I wasn't expecting to. So this presentation is comes from that inspiration. Gardens require a sacred space, a protected environment. Gardens require a lot of patience through the seasons, nourishment. They require us to figure out how to feed the soil and to feed the plants and take care of the plants. Gardening requires humility and faith, a lot of faith in unseen growth and trust that that things will grow and flourish. And in the same way, our devotional life also unfolds gradually through steady cultivation. Sometimes we expect or we can sometimes expect spiritual growth to happen quickly or dramatically, and sometimes it does. But Krishna consciousness is also very deeply organic. It's a living, breathing process, and it takes time to develop season by season. And just as a gardener can't really force a flower or a fruit to develop overnight by our own will, we also can't force spiritual transformation. We can only sincerely cultivate the proper conditions and allow Krishna's mercy to nourish our hearts. So today we'll explore the metaphor together: the garden environment, the soil, the seeds, the watering, the weeds, or the so-called weeds, the seasons, and ultimately offering the flowers and fruits of our devotion back to Krishna and Sri Radha. I'd like to begin by inviting you to take a few deep breaths. And with your imagination, feel your feet on the earth. Allow yourself to get planted on the earth. Imagine walking through an expansive community garden early in the morning. You hear the sounds, you smell the fragrances, and feel and see the texture of nature all around you. The soil is dark and rich, and tiny sprouts are emerging from the earth. Some plants are flourishing beautifully in their full expression of themselves. Others are struggling a little bit against weeds or some dryness. Some areas are overflowing with flowers, and other sections are still waiting for growth. Every gardener understands one important truth: a beautiful garden does not appear overnight. It takes a good idea, vision, planning, a lot of patience and daily effort, faith, protection, water, and perseverance through changing seasons. And honestly, garden is very humbling. You have to get down on your knees, get down on the ground. You have to get dirty, put your hands in the dirt along with all the insects and the worms. You can't simply sit comfortably on the sidelines in a chair and expect a garden to flourish. You have to enter into the process. Bhakti is very much like that, very much the same. Devotional life asks us to participate fully with sincerity, vulnerability, and humility. Bhakti takes action just as a gardener must actively attend to the garden. Sometimes growth is visible, sometimes everything just appears very still, almost as if it's not alive, as if it's dead. Yet underneath the surface, life is quietly unfolding. There's bugs, insects, microorganisms, decomposition, all happening underneath the surface of the soil. Our devotional life is very similar. Bhakti is not mechanical. It grows slowly and naturally when nourished properly. And Krishna and Sri Radha, the divine gardeners of our heart, lovingly helps cultivate devotion where they see sincere effort. Devotion is alive and active. In Srimad Bhagavatam, sacred bhakti text, we hear by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. This verse reminds us that bhakti develops gradually through repeated nourishment. Sometimes we think, why am I still struggling? Why isn't my heart transformed yet? Why do I still feel distracted? But spiritual growth often happens invisibly before it becomes externally visible. A gardener doesn't stand over a seed demanding immediate flowers. She is diligent, the gardener. Her mind is fixed on her eternal relationship with the Lord as a loving servant. She waters, she protects, she provides support, she waits faithfully. Similarly, devotional life requires that same patience, tolerance, humility, compassion, respect for all living beings, perseverance, enthusiasm, and faith. That was a mouthful, a lot of qualities. Not because every day, right? Every day does not necessarily feel inspiring, but because we trust Krishna's process, we're committed. We need faith that a tiny little seed can eventually manifest into a beautiful plant overflowing with flowers and fruit. Before planting anything, a gardener first creates a safe and protected environment for the garden to grow. And then she prepares the soil. Hard, compacted ground cannot nourish delicate plants and roots. Similarly, bhakti grows in a softened heart. Healthy spiritual soil includes humility, gratitude, simplicity, and surrender. But as we know, sometimes our hearts become hardened by hurt, neglect, fear, pride, discouragement, or attachments to things that distract us rather than support us. And sometimes Krishna and Sri Radha, but mainly Krishna, softens the heart through our life experiences. Sometimes difficulties themselves become sacred tools of cultivation. And like with a garden, sometimes unwanted things, unwanted plants called weeds, can be composted with proper care and returned to the soil completely transformed as nutrients. Pain may deepen our dependence on Krishna. Loss may soften our pride and loosen our temporary identities. Disappointments can increase gratitude for the blessings that remain steady in our lives. And challenges may increase our humility and our determination to stay on the path no matter what. Gardens also teach us something important. After many seasons of giving, the soil itself can become depleted, and depleted soil must be replenished. How do we replenish the soil in the garden? Through the process of letting that soil and garden bed rest and finding ways to give back to the soil, possibly by growing plants that increase nutrients in the soil by absorbing them from the sky and transforming them. So, how do we replenish our own inner soil? Through hearing sacred literature, hearing from those who have realizations themselves, by chanting, by resting, going on retreats, through prayer, through nourishing association, through loving service and sacred time in nature, as well as our own honest reflection. Without replenishment, even fertile soil eventually becomes exhausted. In a garden, that replenishment may include, like I mentioned, allowing that garden bed to rest or adding fresh compost. And if you're fortunate, you may have access to the assistance of cows and their composted dung, or growing a cover crop that gets tilled back into the soil, or adding other elements like seaweed or alfalfa. A softened heart becomes fertile ground for devotion. You may quietly reflect, what experiences in my life have softened my heart? What experiences in my life have brought me closer to Krishna and Sri Radha? How do I replenish the soil of my heart after seasons of giving? Humility as fertile soil, in the Sikshastakam verse, the third verse, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches, one should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. It's interesting because in my garden right now, there's a lot of straw, and straw in a garden helps soil retain the moisture. It helps to keep the soil soft. It can kind of suppress sometimes unwanted plants or weeds and creates a shaded place for young seedlings to take root. So sometimes humility is often misunderstood. Humility is not a weakness. It is openness. It is receptivity. It allows mercy to enter the heart. An understanding, who am I? Who is God? What is my relationship to God? How can I reinstate that relationship? Knowing the answers to these questions allows for a pathway to humility, understanding our place in the greater order of things, and not taking our desires, our success, or our failures too seriously. Understanding our relationship to Krishna and Sri Radha brings humility into our lives. And in gardening, humility becomes very practical. You can't garden while remaining perfectly clean. You kneel down in the dirt. You touch the soil. You become willing to enter the process fully. There tends not to be a right or a wrong way of gardening. So many imperfections exist no matter how hard we try, or how hard we try to have things just right or grow things just right. So many things are out of our control. A proud heart resists change. It resists finding new ways of nourishment. A humble heart absorbs grace, knowing I'm not the doer. We're caretakers, we're stewards, we're servants. The garden belongs to Krishna and Sri Radha. Just as soil and soft soil receives water deeply, humility allows spiritual teachings to penetrate our hearts. And humility also, interestingly, creates tolerance. A tree tolerates heat and wind, storms, and still continues giving shelter. And many types of edible plants are specifically grown because they tolerate drought or heat or a lack of sunlight. Similarly, devotional life becomes stronger, more strongly rooted when we are rooted in humility and tolerance, when we can tolerate the different seasons of our life that may feel a bit more dry. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the seed of bhakti. Bhakti begins as a tiny seed. Perhaps for you, it began through hearing a kirtan or meeting a devotee or receiving sacred food, prasadam, or maybe you were in a yoga class and learning about the Bhagavad Gita. Or maybe that seed was planted through your whispering of one sincere prayer. Yet within this tiny seed lies an entire future garden. In the sacred text from Chaitanya Charitamrita, we hear that when a person receives the seed of devotional service, she should take care of it by becoming a gardener and sowing the seed in her heart. If she waters the seed gradually by the process of Shravana and Kirtana, hearing and chanting, the seed begins to sprout. Srila Prabhupada often spoke about the Bhakti Lata Bij, the seed of the creeper of devotion. Once received, that seed is planted. Once received, that seed is planted through association with saintly persons, what we call sadhu sangha, through hearing and chanting and the mercy of our teachers and Krishna and Sri Radha. And importantly, small beginnings matter. No gardener dismisses a seed because it's small. In fact, some seeds are so small they appear as dust. Similarly, Krishna never dismisses even the smallest sincere devotional effort. One of the most difficult parts of gardening is waiting. Sometimes waiting for the winter to kind of pass for that last spring frost. A gardener waters the soil daily without immediately seeing visible results. The gardener stays busy while many tasks that with other tasks that help support the overall garden, while also being available to help other gardeners. Similarly, in devotional life, growth is often hidden. We may think my chanting is dull. I'm not advancing. I'm still struggling. But again, beneath the surface, Krishna may already be transforming your heart. Roots grow before flowers appear. Sometimes the deepest spiritual growth happens invisibly. Dormancy is not failure. Like my dahlia tubers, I dig them up over the winter and they're stored in a cool, dry place, and they don't look like anything at all, really, just this lump of material. It's dormant. Although it's not a failure, winter is also not a punishment. The garden teaches us about cycles, the cycles of life and the cycles of change. Some seasons feel very laborious. Some feel exciting and fruitful and generous. Some seasons feel hidden and uncertain, and some seasons feel very expansive, while other seasons feel more contracted, quiet, and introspective. The Bhagavad Gita teaches us from the verse in the second chapter, O son of Kunti, happiness and distress come and go like winter and summer seasons. One must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. The garden reminds us that seasons always change. No winter lasts forever. And not every difficult season means something is wrong. So devotional life requires trust. Trust in the process, trust in Krishna and Sri Radha's timing, trust that sincere effort is never lost. What helps our devotional garden grow? The process of surrendering to the nature of the garden as well as to bhakti includes accepting things that are favorable for sustenance and growth and rejecting what is unfavorable. There are 6 principles that we hear about, and those principles include enthusiasm. We must be enthusiastic gardeners. We must have confidence, confidence that we've listened to the instructions of how to garden and the steps that could be helpful in our devotional life as well, and feel confident in 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 completing them. We need patience and following spiritual principles. We want to avoid unfavorable relationships that distract us from our goal. And we want to follow our previous teachers. Gardens also need these kind of favorable conditions, plus sunlight and water, healthy soil and protection and careful attention. Similarly, our devotional life flourishes when we intentionally create healthy spiritual conditions. And we also need tools. Every gardener has tools: a wheelbarrow, a shovel, a hoe, pruners, a rake, a trowel. Similarly in bhakti, our tools become our determination, our patience, our tolerance, our compassion, our humility, our attachment to Krishna. These qualities help us continue cultivating even during those difficult seasons. Gardens naturally grow weeds. We were talking about this concept of a weed before, right before we started our gathering today. And we know that these weeds are just plants maybe in a wrong spot where they could hold secrets and benefits, but they might not be in the best place. We might not want them in our garden because we're focusing on growing other types of plants. So our hearts also contain some weeds, some unwanted plants, including envy, the weed of envy, the weed of comparison, the weed of criticism or false pride, the weed of greediness or distraction or apathy. And sometimes these weeds can grow very quietly, and sometimes these weeds can even look spiritually externally. That's why introspection and honesty are so important. And sometimes the helpful eye of a co-gardener, a friend in our path. A gardener removes weeds repeatedly and patiently. Similarly, devotional purification is an ongoing process. For example, right now, in the past few days, we've had lots and lots of rain here in Washington, D.C. And while I know my garden and my plants are really loving that, I'm also very aware that I'm going to have a whole forest of new weeds to carefully pluck out of the soil. So let's pause for reflection. Taking a few deep breaths. What is nourishing my devotion right now? And what is stealing nourishment from my devotional creeper? Women often spend enormous energy nourishing others, whether that's through our children, our family, through community, friends, other devotees. And sometimes while caring for others, we neglect our own spiritual nourishment. So, caring for our devotional life is not selfish, it's essential. Daily nourishment gives us strength to continue serving with steadiness and compassion. And a healthy community garden flourishes when gardeners also help one another. Similarly, devotional communities flourish through encouragement, kindness, forgiveness, compassion, and support. At a community garden, everyone is participating together. There's one shared mission, one service, one shared responsibility to become caregivers or stewards of Krishna's creation. And compassion creates healthy spiritual environments where devotion can continue growing. Compassion for ourselves and compassion for all living entities. And let's not forget that every garden grows differently. In a community garden, every plant grows differently. It has different needs. It has different conditions that it enjoys. It does better with certain companion plants than other plants. Some plants bloom early, some grow very slowly and finally flower at the very end of the season, late into the autumn. Some plants require more shade, some thrive in different seasons. Similarly, every devotee has different strengths, different struggles, different rates of growth. Comparison can become a destructive spiritual weed. Instead of asking, why is her garden flourishing more than mine? We could ask, how can I better care for the devotion Krishna has entrusted in me? Or what can I learn from what I admire in my fellow gardener friend? In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, if one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I will accept it. The verse beautifully connects with the metaphor of gardening. Krishna does not ask for perfection. In fact, Krishna is imperfect, and so are we. He does not ask for grand displays of devotion. Being a gardener doesn't even require one to be rich. Krishna asks for devotion. Sri Radha asks for our devotion. Even a simple offering becomes spiritually meaningful when offered with the tool or sincerity, the tool of sincerity. The garden reminds us that Krishna provides everything. Krishna is the source of sunlight, rain, seeds, the soil, even the ability to offer something back to him. And we can look at the symbolism of the offerings. A leaf may represent small beginnings. Like right now in my garden, all of the edible leaves are growing in abundance. It's a small beginning in the spring. A flower may represent blossoming qualities like humility and compassion. And fruits represent mature devotion, one who has been through a lot in order to be at that place to hand a fruit to another devotee and to share that harvest. Water represents nourishment through hearing and chanting and prayer. The garden also teaches us that life itself becomes a process of giving and receiving Krishna's mercy, and then offering that nourishment back with gratitude. In the sacred text, Srimad Bhagavatam, it also warns us that entitlement and ungratefulness become impediments on the spiritual path. And gratitude softens the heart and keeps devotion alive. Another beautiful verse from the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 9 says that, but it is I who am the ritual, I the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors. It is I who is the healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offering. And Krishna says, I am the healing herb that grows in the garden. The garden teaches us that Krishna's mercy is present everywhere. And just as a child picks their mother's roses from her rose bush and then gives it back to her for her birthday, Krishna is the source of all things material and spiritual. This gratitude softens the heart and keeps our devotion alive. A very interesting thing happens when Krishna accepts an offering that we make. In another sacred text, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we hear that although Sri Gopal, who is a deity, ate everything offered, still everything remained as before. This teaching helps us understand the spiritual nature of prasadam. Externally, the offering from our garden appears unchanged. We place it upon the altar, but spiritually, its quality becomes transformed. Krishna fully accepts offerings made with devotion. And just as seeds transform invisibly beneath the soil before visible growth appears, offerings made with sincere devotion transform the consciousness of the heart in ways that may not immediately be perceived by us. Many devotional offerings happen also very quietly. They're definitely not seen when we're in our kitchens preparing a meal, offering those things on our simple home altar, cleaning our homes, the temple of our homes, encouraging another devotee, listening compassionately, continuing devotional practices despite our exhaustion. Sometimes these acts may seem very small or unnoticed, but Krishna sees the devotion behind every offering, and nothing offered with sincerity is ever lost in bhakti. As devotion matures, spiritual qualities naturally begin to blossom. So we can reflect on this and take an inventory of our own connection with compassion. Do we feel a greater sense of compassion? Where do we feel compassion? Is our ability for patience, has it been increased? Do we have a little more steadiness in our practices, or greater gratitude, less selfishness, more joy in hearing about Krishna and Sri Radha? These are the flowers of devotional life. A fragrant garden also naturally benefits everyone nearby. Similarly, sincere devotion uplifts. Yes, it uplifts others naturally. Krishna is the supreme gardener. Ultimately, no garden grows solely through our own effort. The sunlight, the rain, life itself all come from Krishna. While we make effort in bhakti, real transformation comes by mercy. Krishna understands our desires, our struggles, our sincerity, our wounds, our efforts. Even during spiritually difficult periods, Krishna never abandons the garden. Every season has value. Let's take another little journey. I'll invite you again to take a few deep breaths. And I'd like to invite everyone into a brief reflection. Imagine yourself entering a beautiful garden. This is your sacred spiritual garden. It's a garden where you have the opportunity to develop your relationship with Krishna. Notice in this sacred space what is flourishing as you look around. Notice what may need nourishment and attention. Notice any weeds gently and without judgment. Now imagine Krishna and Sri Radha standing beside you in this garden. Peaceful, patient, kind, and playful. You may ask the divine couple, what part of my devotional garden needs the most attention right now? And ask, what quality are you asking me to cultivate more deeply? Now offer your entire garden to Krishna and Sri Radha. Not only the beautiful flowers, but also the unfinished places, the struggling places, and the places still growing beneath the surface. Take one final breath. No sincere effort in bhakti is ever wasted. With patience, humility, determination, lots of compassion, tolerance, and daily nourishment, the seed of devotion gradually blossoms into love for the divine couple. Don't become discouraged by slow growth. Continue watering, continue serving, continue chanting, continuing to offer your heart sincerely. And in time, by Krishna's mercy, the garden of bhakti will bloom beautifully. Thank you all so much for walking with me through this reflection on the metaphor between gardening and gardening our devotional lives. I think Damodar Priya, we're going to take some time in some breakout rooms
Yes,
to
thank you so
spend
much.
some
I
time
can
together.
I'm so excited to share these beautiful breakout questions that you prepared for us. So I'm going to put them in the chat as well. But it, our questions that we will be speaking on for those who will be watching the recording later on are what helps you stay spiritually nourished or tolerant during difficult seasons? And have you experienced the weed of comparison? And how do you overcome it? So let me just pause. Welcome back. We are in our Urban Devi questions and answers and reflections section. This is our opportunity to kind of dive deeper with Shamala Priya on some of the beautiful things that she shared, and just also maybe share some reflections on things that happened during our breakout rooms that really inspired us, or that we really want to uh, dig deeper, I should say, instead of dive deeper, since we're doing the gardening uh, kind of symbology, so to say. But I also wanted to share, so we have it on the recording, that how Kelly put in the chat that we loved, how she said, so beautiful. I feel watered, nourished, fertilized, sunned. Thank you so much. So I love that. That's lovely. So please feel free to raise your virtual hand or put something in the chat. If you don't have anything, I did have someone send me a question that had to leave early for you, Shamala Priya. So while people are percolating, I'll share that. They said, as a therapist and a devotee, how would you help someone who thinks being humble means allowing others to abuse them, or even just not saying no to service or other requests? Please.
Okay, so the first part I might need a repeat, have you repeat the second part of that question.
Yeah, I could do that now. So what they said was, how would you help someone who thinks being humble means allowing others to abuse them, or even just not saying no to service or other requests?
Mm, okay. Yes, it's definitely not humble to accept abuse. Humility is, we have to have the humility to know that we have an intended life to live, that each of us has a divine purpose in our life that is so, so special and so important for us each to live out that that purpose. And for us in spiritual and as devotees, that purpose is to increase our relationship to the Lord, loving and with devotees. And if there are things and people and relationships that are harming us, we absolutely need to protect ourselves and help protect others. If someone comes to us and says something's happening, this relationship is starting to hurt me, then of course our dear friends know us. They want the best for us. They want our bhakti to grow. And if it's not beneficial, then they'll let us know, hey, we have options. We have ways to move away from this relationship that also honor the other person and protect the person by not allowing them to harm us. So, just like plants in the garden, we have to protect our plants from rabbits. I have a rabbit fence. I rabbits are great. Don't get me wrong. Eat what is outside of my fence, please. Okay, I will plant some extra things for you, but not here, not here. This is sacred space. So, humility is not accepting abuse. And saying no is that what are we saying yes to? I love what Rukmini has always shared from me with me from the beginning. Closing a door means another door is opening. So when we say no, what are we actually saying yes to? And Krishna wants us to continually and constantly make those choices to that nourish us and that come towards him. So, is that good?
Yes, and then they had that second part about people who have trouble saying no to service or to other requests. So it's not exactly abuse, but they just can't say no.
We do have, this people pleasing quality at times, but we have to really reflect on what mm, what purpose is that serving? What purpose is that serving? Why are we saying yes? Is that a good thing for us? Is it not so good? So of course, we want to be open and generous, right, with our time. But as women, usually that's not the problem. We're very generous. The question is there something that we're not feeding within ourselves? Are we, like I said in the presentation, um, are we becoming depleted? Because when we become depleted, then we don't have much to give anymore. That can have create long-term damage to ourselves. So it's something then again to work with someone one-on-one to explore, like in a therapeutic setting. Why is it that it's so hard for me to say no? Why am I so giving to the point that it's hurting me?
Thank you so much, Shyamala. And I just want to read a comment to this question because since the person had to leave early so that they can hear it in the recording, Kelly said, when we close a door saying no, what are we saying yes to? Beautiful. And then someone else said, well, saying yes means saying no to something that we are meant to do. So that's really powerful as well. So thank you so much, everyone, and Shyamala Priya for sharing that. And Nicole, yes, please. What would you like to share?
Hi, Krishna. So nice to see you, Shamala. I so appreciate this analogy so much. I have genuinely 4 pages of notes. They just kept coming. I was like, this is just incredible and so relevant to like feelings that I have been feeling recently. This idea of like the devotion growing inside of us and patience and having to trust. The two things that I wanted to share is one weed that I have been becoming more observant of in myself lately is this like how I'm becoming more aware of my own self-absorption and my own my own tendencies to just be like me centered. And when you were walking us through the like walk through your garden and it's a sacred garden and it's beautiful and I was like my first thought was like, oh, there's all of these beautiful vegetables here and I want them for me. And when is it going to be that I'm in my heart, I'm like, when is it going to be that when I see all these beautiful vegetables, I want to offer them to Krishna before myself? Um, and then just in relating to the topic of weeds, because we talked about weeds a lot in our breakout groups, Rukmini asked me to share one analogy that I have come up with in my head is like if I'm in my garden and there's weeds, what I do is I pick all the weeds out and I put them in a sunny place where there's no soil and I let the sun kill them. So in spiritual life, I can say I have weeds growing in my heart. So I can see there's a weed, I need to pluck it. Let me pluck whatever weeds I'm seeing right now and let me put them over here in the sun and I will let Krishna take care of those so that I can keep working on tending my garden. Thank you.
That's beautiful. It's almost like those weeds are getting the purification from those rays of the sunlight. And I think that's beautiful is that we pull those weeds, lay them in the sunlight, compost them. They're never wasted, right? It then can be absorbed back into the earth as nutrients.
Love it. I love how we're keeping that garden kind of imagery going. I love it. Malati, please go ahead and share.
You're muted.
Yep. We lost you, Malati. Where are you?
She's there, but
Hare
she's
Krishna.
There she
Is
is.
this better? Okay. Sorry about that. I thank you so much, Syamala Priya Devi Dasi, for such a beautiful class. I thought that it was an amazing analogy that could just almost go on forever in the best kind of way. Like it just parallels so exactly. It's amazing. A couple of reflections I just wanted to share. I was cracking up at the theme because gardening is something that I have had a complicated relationship the past 2 years. I got a house that has a garden and I have to take care of it. And I didn't want to be a gardener. I didn't sign up to be a gardener. I don't have any experience being a gardener. And I have had to learn the hard way. And it was been hard and it's been like an emotional journey. And I've learned a lot of things, which paralleled so much of your class. One thing just to share in reflection, because you were talking about weeds. I used to, I've had in the past, I've had in the past tendencies to people please, trouble with perfectionism, and at difficulty sometimes discerning when to say yes and no, who to say no to, that kind of stuff. And one year, I let the weeds in my garden get so bad and run the whole garden over because I couldn't decide if it was okay to remove the weeds in terms of like, well, they're plants too, and they have souls, and I really like had an emotional struggle. And then with time and healing and, with my job on reflection, I came to understand that importance of weeding the garden and discerning, what to allow to grow and what not. And it was a really useful part of my bhakti practice as I was doing the same with my own bhakti practice. It speaks to everything you said, what to say yes to, what to say no to. So thank you for sharing that. And that came up for me. And then the other quick reflection I just wanted to share was when you first asked us to think of a garden, a sacred garden. I guess my mind jumped ahead, and I was just, or yeah, and I definitely thought like, okay, this is my garden. This is like my inner personal special space. And so I was like, the first thing I'm going to do is build a wall. So I had this pretty garden within a stone wall. And then you said, and then Radha and Krishna are there, and this is for them. And I was like, oh, and immediately my mind went to, well, a wall will not do. Like we have to let all the animals in. There has to be a vegetable garden for the animals around, and which is funny you say that about the rabbits. So that's just to share that for me, I saw that as like, okay, I think this japa practice is working. I think my heart's finally softening a little because apparently when it comes to, I think it's good to have personal boundaries. And also I'm reflecting on how my bhakti practice has, I guess just Krishna can empower us to do more than maybe we felt we could or felt comfortable doing before. That's my short reflection. Thank you again so much for class.
Thank you, Malati. It was so wonderful to hear from you. And one particular thing that I really liked that you shared is that when Radha and Krishna appeared in the garden, that there was no longer this need for this wall, and it shows like your trust that the Lord provides for all of us, that we all will have enough. The birds can have what they need, the bees, the rabbits, the deer, even the mice, and there's enough. There's enough, and Krishna protects us. Yeah. Thank you, Malati.
Yeah, thank you so
And
much.
you're so compassionate that you're like really, wanting not to harm those weeds. It's not the most perfect analogy, really, because we're not, wanting to harm anyone. Actually, when we are weeding those things from our hearts, it's not that we're dismissing or harming anyone. We're just creating a little more space for us to grow. Like plants require certain type of spacing. If you plant too many, tomato plants right next to each other, there just is not enough room. So we're just like, okay, moving things a little bit further away.
Yeah, I love that. It made me think of what you were saying before we started about, that weed or that plant can go somewhere in somebody else's garden, might be a better fit, and that's okay. And Lalila, please go ahead and share.
Syamala Priya, thank you so much for this class. The metaphor is just so expansive, and it has brought up so many great thoughts, and we had so much to talk about in our group. We did kind of get into the weeds about weeds, though, and so one of the things we were I was thinking of was I'm in New York City, so for me it's community gardens, right? No one has their own garden, and so what I thought of was spiritually that it's our responsibility to weed our garden so those weeds don't spread to other gardens. So that really came up for me. And then we started talking about how those weeds can be composted, and that in the community garden, there's that big bin that you put the weeds in along with food and leaves, right? So other good things. And then you turn them over and mix them with good things. But that turning over and examining, we've talked about what that would look like. And then another thing on a personal note, I was thinking of what keeps you spiritually nourished or tolerant during a difficult season. And I think that I have to pay attention to my garden. Um, I, I can water and water and water, but then overwater. I can have sunlight, 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 and then burn the plants. So for me, it's important to pay attention to what's needed, because right now I need solitude and books and quiet. And I'm finding that I really need that for my garden. So for me, that's also nourishing, is knowing when to stop with those things that have previously been so needed in my garden, but perhaps are no longer needed at the moment. So anyway, thank you again for an amazing class and a wonderful metaphor. I think that there's so much to learn from it.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's so beautiful to hear from you. And yes, I agree that it is a service. It is a service to others to take care of our weeds. That is true. You know, in our community garden also, there's some really serious invasive weeds. And if they flower and if they produce seeds, then that's going to make it hard for everyone. So yeah, it's more than just us. It's our community.
Yeah, that was a really powerful metaphor about it's not just about helping yourself. It's not just about helping the person who's possibly being abusive or just not minding boundaries, but it's about the whole community. That's wonderful. And we have time to hear from our co-host, Nartaki Radha, please.
Hi, Krishna. Thank you so much, Syamala Priya. This was amazing. I just want to bring up a little metaphor that revealed itself within my own garden as I have had more time to get out there. And I have California poppies spreading everywhere, which I love because I'll let them take over any day, every day. But one thing that I recognized this season that I really hadn't paid attention to in prior seasons is the nature of those California poppy flowers. And they are four-petaled, bright orange, and they bloom and shine brightly when the sun is out. But when darkness comes or when the clouds and storms start coming in, they pull inward and protect their delicate flowers, their delicate petals, by pulling inward. And all four of those petals cling to each other. And it's just helping me to remember the importance of recognizing the seasons and the storms that might come into our life, and where do we go when those storms come in, and pulling inward in towards Krishna, becoming curious, asking what is the lesson, what is my role, where do I move from here, and taking that time to come into stillness and into protection of our tender hearts can really help Krishna speak to us and through us. And I'm still working on some some weeds that are creeping in that are taking me away from my practice, but this is really helping me to organize and recognize how I can approach different situations. With love and honoring that if I set boundaries, it's going to allow Krishna to utilize those boundaries how he chooses, not only in my life, but in others as well. So thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much. That was a lot of nourishment I just received. Thank you. I'm glad this is being recorded.
Get it? It's not just for everybody else, it's for the hosts as well. It's for the facilitators as well, right? So that's wonderful. And with that, we're coming towards the end of our time, dear ladies. So please keep in mind that we'd love to hear from you. Please look in the chat if you want to join our chat WhatsApp groups, or if you want to kind of support Rukmini in her efforts of spreading Urban Devi far and wide. There's more information in the chat, but now we'd love to hear from Rukmini, as well as, again, give our great thanks to Syamala Priya for taking us on this beautiful garden journey of the heart. Haribo.
Haribo, thank you so much, Syamala Priya. And I think there's also in the chat or somewhere you're sharing it, if anyone would like to reach out to Syamala Priya and contact her, she is a certified therapist. And Syamala Priya, I am just beyond beyond belief here. I also have 4 pages of notes, and so many images are just flying around in my heart. I was just thinking of, first of all, I could spend another hour going through my 4 pages of notes, but just the idea of the compassion of pulling the weeds, how that's a compassion upon myself, and it's a compassion upon everyone in community to pull those weeds and to, it almost sounds like, is it like Malati said, is this compassionate to pull these weeds? They're also flowers, they're also plants, but compassion upon myself and others in community to pull those weeds so those weeds don't run rampant in community. And also just, I love the idea of trusting Radha and Krishna, planting enough for everyone. I love what you said, Syamala Priya, about, you can plant something for the rabbits outside the wall. Rabbits are people too. It was just so beautiful. I just loved this session so much. As much as I love you, Syamala Priya, it was just so beautiful. And I want to talk about, so our next Urban Devi session, please, please, please note on your calendars, June 28th, we have a really interesting lady speaking. Sukavaha Devi Dasi is going to speak about revealing the heart and discovering what covers our heart and soul. Interestingly enough, she's the daughter of a Protestant minister, and at one point her parents paid money to have her deprogrammed. I don't know if you've heard of this before, but she will maybe speak about this. But let me just share what she says. In this discussion, we begin to discover and name some of the layers of protection piled on top of our soul. Although these layers may have helped us survive our childhood and youth, in our adult life and our spiritual life, they begin to feel suffocating to our soul. So, so she wants to discuss these different modalities of healing for people on the spiritual path, buried emotions, and how to assist in our relationships and spiritual development. So she works a lot with compassion. She's written some books, Revealing the Heart, The Practice of Compassion. Anyway, please join us on June 28th because she will be fabulous. She's very accessible and sweet and relatable. So thank you so much, all of you, for being here. I feel so much love for all of you. Karen, Kelly, Malati, Nicole, who I just met, Shraddhanjali, my old dear friend, Ladali Lal, Damodar Priya, Nartaki Radha, all of you who are still here, Lynn. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for supporting Urban Devi with all of your fertilizing images and loving hearts. Haribol.